The creature's roar echoed through the observation deck, shaking the very foundations of the Galactic Senate. Every race present flinched, their diverse physiologies registering the sound in a symphony of involuntary reactions. The Quellian's bioluminescent skin dimmed, the Krill's chitinous plates vibrated audibly, and the Zorgonian delegation recoiled as one, their multiple eyes wide with terror. Except for one human. Timothy Walker simply smiled, extending a hand, palm open and unthreatening towards the source of the sonic eruption. "Terminated immediately. Protocol 72 is clear," barked Senator Gorok, his gravelly voice amplified by the Senate's acoustics. A ripple of agreement spread through the chamber, a chorus of clicks, growls, and translated pronouncements of fear. They cited precedent, historical data, anything to get the beast removed. Timothy lowered his hand slightly but didn't retreat. "With all due respect, Senator, the Galactic Preservation Society's mandate is to protect, not destroy. This Voxari is clearly distressed and potentially injured. Termination should be a last resort." His voice, amplified just enough to carry, was calm against the rising tide of panic. He knew he was walking a tightrope. One wrong word, one misplaced gesture, and Thea would be doomed. A flicker of memory, unbidden and unwelcome, flashed through Timothy's mind. The sterile white walls of another lab, the desperate chirps of a dying Xantarian songbird, his own outstretched hand reaching too late. A wave of guilt threatened to drown him, but he pushed it back, focusing on the present, on the creature before him. He couldn't fail again. "The Voxari are apex predators," Senator Flaria hissed, her serpentine body coiling tighter. "They are responsible for the extinction of countless species. There is no reasoning with them." Timothy stood firm. "This one is different, I can feel it." He knew it sounded naive, even foolish, but it was the truth. A hush fell over the chamber as Senator Lyra, a respected elder of the peaceful Sylvani race, raised a hand. Her voice, soft yet resonant, cut through the tension. "The human makes a valid point. Perhaps a temporary reprieve. Allow him to assess the creature, but under strict observation and with guarantees of public safety." After much heated debate, fueled by the fear, Timothy secured temporary custody of the Voxari, now designated subject Thea, under the auspices of the Galactic Preservation Society. He was granted access to a secure containment facility on the outskirts of the Senate complex. It was a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. Thea, as he now knew her to be called, was far more injured than he had initially assessed. Deep lacerations crisscrossed her armored hide, and one of her massive clawed paws was twisted at an unnatural angle. The air around her reeked of antiseptic and fear, a cocktail that only amplified her distress. It was clear she had been subjected to brutal treatment during her capture. As Timothy approached her holding cell, Thea snarled, a guttural sound that vibrated through his bones. He froze, holding his hands up in a gesture of peace. "I'm here to help," he said softly, knowing she likely didn't understand the words but hoping she would sense the intent. News reports flashed across the datapads of a million worlds, each one painting Thea as a monster, a harbinger of destruction. Historical data was dredged up, detailing the Voxari's brutal conquests and insatiable hunger. The galaxy watched, terrified and expectant, waiting for the inevitable catastrophe. Alone in his quarters that night, Timothy stared at the schematics of the Voxari anatomy projected onto his wall. He knew the odds were stacked against him. Gaining Thea's trust would be a monumental task, fraught with danger, but he couldn't turn back. He wouldn't. He spent hours poring over every available piece of information on Voxari biology and culture, searching for any clue, any hint of a way to reach her. He consulted with xenobiologists, veterinarians, even anthropologists, gleaning fragments of knowledge that might help him understand her. He read about their complex social structures, their hunting rituals, their surprisingly sophisticated communication methods. He was determined to find a way to connect. During one of his early observation sessions, Timothy noticed Thea watching him intently as he adjusted the temperature controls in her enclosure. Her head tilted slightly, as if she were trying to understand his actions. It was a small thing, barely perceptible, but it gave him a flicker of hope. The bureaucratic red tape was a nightmare. Every request for medical supplies, every petition for specialized equipment, was met with resistance and suspicion. He was forced to navigate a labyrinth of regulations and political maneuvering, fighting for every single resource he needed to care for Thea. It seemed some senators were hoping she would die. One afternoon, as Timothy cleaned a particularly deep wound on Thea's flank, she unexpectedly nudged his hand with her snout. It was a tentative gesture, almost hesitant, but it was there. A spark of curiosity, a flicker of trust. Looking into Thea's eyes, Timothy saw not a monster but a creature in pain, a prisoner of fear and circumstance. He renewed his vow, whispering, "I won't let you down, Thea. I promise." He would restore her health, gain her trust, and prove to the galaxy that even the most feared creature deserved a chance at redemption. The hum of the bioscanner vibrated through Timothy's fingertips as he adjusted the focusing lens. The air in the makeshift medical bay, carved out of a disused storage compartment, was thick with the metallic tang of alien antiseptics, and the faint, earthy scent emanating from Thea's massive form. Her scaled hide, usually a deep, intimidating obsidian, was mottled with patches of raw, inflamed flesh where the slaver's energy weapons had struck. He ran another diagnostic, the readings scrolling across the holographic display above him. Her respiration remained shallow, ragged. He reached for a vial of synthetic protein compound, a broad-spectrum regenerative agent used across multiple species. As he injected the compound into a port on Thea's armored leg, her body convulsed. Not violently, but a subtle tremor that made the monitoring equipment spike erratically. Alarms blared, bathing the room in harsh red light. Her heart rate, already dangerously low, plummeted. Timothy cursed under his breath. Damn it, what now? He grabbed a neural stimulant, a standard human medication designed to boost cellular activity. Hesitantly, he administered a small dose. The effect was immediate but unexpected. Thea's eyes snapped open, the reptilian pupils dilating to pinpricks. She thrashed against the restraints, a guttural roar tearing from her throat. Not a roar of pain, but something different, something akin to terror. Then just as suddenly she went limp, her breathing even shallower than before. A wave of nausea washed over Timothy. He squeezed his eyes shut, the image of another creature, another failed rescue, searing itself into his mind. Flashback, a lush alien jungle, the air thick with humidity. Timothy, younger, more hopeful, cradling a dying, iridescent winged creature in his arms, its fragile body shuddering as its life ebbed away. His desperate pleas for it to hold on, swallowed by the alien foliage. The creature's final, rattling breath, the crushing weight of failure. He shook the memory away, forcing himself back to the present. Thea needed him. He couldn't fail again. He needed more specialized equipment, a resonant imager to pinpoint the source of the internal trauma. He rushed to the comm terminal, his fingers flying across the interface to access the Galactic Medical Supply database. He located a compatible unit, its location listed as the Central Depot on Nar Shaddaa. He filed the requisition order. Minutes later, a curt reply flashed on the screen. Requisition DENIED. Resource allocation PRIORITIES. Species classification, hostile. Further medical intervention not advised. Timothy pounded his fist against the console. Bureaucratic bastards, he spat. He activated the holoprojector, the image of a news broadcast flickering to life. A stern-faced Krogan reporter stood before a distorted image of Thea, her teeth bared in what was clearly a defensive snarl. The so-called rescued Voxari continues to pose a significant threat to public safety. Experts warn that these apex predators are inherently aggressive and unpredictable. Galactic citizens are urged to exercise extreme caution. Other headlines scrolled across the bottom of the screen. VOXARI, monster or misunderstood. Galactic Senate DEBATES VOXARI extermination bill. He switched off the projector, his expression resolute. Fear. That's all they peddled, fear and ignorance. He turned back to Thea. As he adjusted an IV drip, she shifted slightly, her massive head nudging against his arm. Not a violent shove, but a gentle, almost affectionate touch. He stared at her, stunned. He needed that imager, and he wasn't going to get it through official channels. He scanned the storage bay, his gaze settling on a deactivated mining laser and a disassembled atmospheric processor. An idea sparked in his mind. It was a long shot, but he had nothing to lose. Hours later, sweat dripped from Timothy's brow as he welded the final connection on his makeshift incubator. It was a Frankensteinian contraption of scavenged parts and repurposed technology, held together with duct tape and sheer desperation. But it would have to do. He gently guided Thea into the incubator, sealing the transparent energy field around her. He monitored her vitals, praying that his jury-rigged creation wouldn't kill her. As he worked, he noticed something strange. Thea was watching him. Her reptilian eyes, usually cold and distant, seemed to be focused. And then she did something that made his blood run cold. She raised a clawed hand, mimicking the gesture he had used to adjust the incubator's power settings. Timothy froze. It couldn't be. Could she actually be learning? He accessed the galactic archives, searching for any information on Voxari communication methods. The data was sparse, contradictory, and mostly based on anecdotal evidence from terrified explorers. The general consensus: Voxari were incapable of complex communication. They relied on instinct and brute force. He glanced back at the holoprojector, still displaying the image of the snarling Voxari. He cringed, then switched it on again. As the Krogan reporter droned on about the dangers of the Voxari menace, Thea let out a low, guttural growl, her eyes fixed on the screen. It wasn't a roar of aggression, but something else entirely. Something mournful. Understanding dawned on Timothy. She understood. She understood what they were saying about her. Desperate, Timothy contacted Dr. Ilara Vaughn, a respected Xyler physician known for her unconventional methods and her deep empathy for all species. Ilara, I need your help. I've got a Voxari here, severely injured. Human medications are having unpredictable effects. Ilara's holographic image flickered to life. Voxari, you say? Those creatures are notoriously difficult to treat. Their physiology is unique. She paused, stroking her chin with a tentacle. Have you considered bioacupuncture, or perhaps a targeted neurostim pulse? I've had some success with similar species. Timothy listened intently, scribbling notes on a datapad. He knew he was grasping at straws, but he had to try everything. He spent the next few hours talking to Thea, his voice soft and soothing. He described the world outside the storage bay, the beauty of the nebulae, the laughter of children on distant planets. He knew she couldn't understand his words, but he hoped she could sense his intentions, his desire to help her. As he spoke, he noticed a subtle shift in her posture. Her head tilted slightly, as if she were listening intently. Her breathing seemed to regulate, becoming less ragged, more peaceful. A flicker of hope ignited within him. Then the comm system blared to life, a harsh, grating voice filling the room. Timothy Walker, this is Senator Gorin of the Galactic Senate. Cease your unauthorized activities immediately and surrender the Voxari to galactic authorities. Your actions are a threat to public safety and will not be tolerated. Timothy ignored the transmission, focusing on Thea. He knew that Senator Gorin, a vocal proponent of species segregation, wouldn't stop at mere condemnation. He would use every resource at his disposal to take Thea away. And then there was the matter of her genetic mutation. If word got out about her unique cognitive abilities, she would become a target for unscrupulous organizations, weapon manufacturers, and black market bioengineers. He had to protect her. He had to find a way to prove to the galaxy that she was more than just a monster. Suddenly, Thea convulsed violently. Her body arched, her eyes rolled back in her head, and a low, rattling sound escaped her throat. The monitors flatlined. Timothy lunged forward, his heart pounding in his chest. Thea, no. He ripped open the incubator, frantically searching for the source of the problem. And then he saw it. A small, almost invisible puncture wound on her abdomen, hidden beneath a layer of thick scales. A wound that was bleeding internally, flooding her organs. He was running out of time. The alien doctor frowned, his multifaceted eyes reflecting the readings on the diagnostic screen. The fractured rib cage has punctured her lung, creating a pneumothorax. Her respiratory system is failing. He paused, manipulating controls on his console. I can attempt a risky procedure. It involves injecting a biosynthetic sealant directly into the lung tissue to stimulate regeneration. It's experimental, even by my standards. The chance of rejection is significant. Timothy ran a hand through his hair, already feeling the familiar sting of impending failure. What are the alternatives? There are none. Without intervention, she will suffocate. Then do it, Timothy said, his voice firm despite the knot of dread tightening in his stomach. Do it now. The doctor nodded, preparing the injection. The device was designed for a different species, its nozzle too large for Thea's delicate physiology. The delivery system is incompatible. I cannot guarantee a precise application. Timothy's gaze swept the cluttered medical bay, landing on a discarded nutrient injector. I can adapt it. He grabbed the injector, stripping away its outer casing with practiced ease. He rerouted the power conduits, calibrating the pressure settings with minute adjustments. The alien doctor watched in surprised silence as Timothy, fueled by desperation, transformed the crude device into a makeshift delivery system. Ready, Timothy announced, his hands trembling slightly as he offered the modified injector. The doctor administered the sealant. Almost immediately, Thea's body convulsed. Her breathing became ragged, her skin flushed crimson. The monitors shrieked, displaying a cascade of alarming readings. Rejection, massive inflammatory response, the doctor exclaimed, frantically adjusting settings on his console. Her system is overloading. A wave of nausea washed over Timothy. He stumbled back, his vision blurring. No, not again. Flashback, a smaller feathered creature lay twitching on a similar table, its eyes glazed with pain. Timothy, younger and more naive, watched helplessly as its life signs faded. I tried, he'd whispered then, the words hollow against the silence of death. I did everything I could. But he hadn't. He'd failed. He blinked, snapping back to the present. Thea was dying. He couldn't let it happen again. Her core temperature is spiking. The doctor shouted. We need to stabilize her. Timothy ripped open the incubator, his fingers flying across the control panel. He bypassed the automated settings, manually regulating the temperature, humidity, and oxygen levels. He rerouted coolant lines, diverting excess heat away from Thea's body. Sweat dripped from his brow as he fought to keep her alive, his movements precise and desperate. I need cryostabilizers, Timothy barked, his voice strained, and a concentrated dose of anti-inflammatory serum. Now, the doctor hesitated. I've already administered the maximum safe dosage. Any more could be fatal. Just get them. Timothy's comm unit crackled to life. It was the senator's aide. Dr. Walker, Senator Vrook has instructed me to inform you that your request for additional medical supplies has been denied. Resources are stretched thin, and the allocation committee deems further investment in this creature unwarranted. Timothy stared at the comm unit, his heart made. Are you serious? She's dying. The senator wishes you the best in your endeavors. However, he emphasizes that the safety and well-being of the galactic community take precedence. The line went dead. Rage surged through Timothy, but he suppressed it. He couldn't afford to waste time on anger. He activated the station's emergency broadcast system, overriding the official channels. DRIS is Dr. Timothy Walker, Galactic Preservation Society. I need immediate medical assistance. I have a critically injured Voxari in need of cryostabilizers and anti-inflammatory serum. Official channels are blocked. If anyone can hear me, please respond. Her life depends on it. He ended the transmission, his heart pounding in his chest. He had just risked everything. A low, guttural sound emanated from the incubator. Timothy rushed to Thea's side. Her eyes were squeezed shut, her body trembling. Then a weak, high-pitched whine escaped her throat, a sound unlike anything Timothy had ever heard. It was a cry of distress, a desperate plea for help. The first true vocalization he'd heard from her. It tore at his soul. Static crackled over the comm unit. A distorted voice, speaking in heavily accented galactic standard, Doctor led the room. Dr. Walker, we have received your transmission. We are en route with the requested medical supplies. ETA 15 minutes. Who is this? Timothy demanded, relief flooding through him. We are friends, we will explain later. The transmission ended. 15 minutes stretched into an eternity. Just as Timothy began to lose hope, alarms blared throughout the station. Unidentified vessel approaching, bearing 227 Mark IV, transmitting unauthorized docking sequence. The senator's aide's voice, imbued with panic, rackled over the comm. Dr. Walker, that vessel is unregistered. Senator Vrook has ordered security to intercept it. Do not interfere. Timothy ignored him. He raced to the observation deck, watching as a small, battered freighter limped towards the station. As it approached the docking bay, 2 security cruisers materialized, blocking its path. Energy weapons charged, their ominous glow reflecting off the freighter's scarred hull. This was not going to happen. Without hesitation, Timothy activated his emergency override code, seizing control of the docking bay doors. The doors hissed open, creating a narrow passage for the freighter. Security forces, stand down. I am ordering Doctor to allow this vessel to dock. Dr. Walker, you are in direct violation of Senator Vrook's orders. The security chief's voice boomed over the comm. Stand down immediately or we will be forced to use lethal force. I am a doctor, Timothy replied, his voice unwavering. My priority is saving a life. If you interfere, you will have to go through me. He sealed his helmet and activated his mag boots, stepping out onto the exposed docking platform. He activated his personal shield generator, the energy field shimmering around him. The security cruisers opened fire. Energy bolts slammed against Timothy's shield, straining its capacity. He braced himself against the onslaught, his gaze fixed on the approaching freighter. The freighter docked, its access ramp extending towards Timothy. He sprinted towards it, dodging the barrage of energy fire. He reached the ramp, grabbing a medkit from the outstretched hand of a shadowy figure inside. Thank you, Timothy gasped, turning back towards the security cruisers. Get out of here, now. The freighter disengaged and sped away, narrowly avoiding another volley of energy fire. Timothy, clutching the medkit, retreated back inside the station, the docking bay doors slamming shut behind him. He raced back to the medical bay, his heart pounding with adrenaline and hope. He administered the cryostabilizers and the anti-inflammatory serum. Slowly, agonizingly, Thea's vital signs began to stabilize. Her breathing became less labored, her skin regained its normal lavender hue. She was still unconscious, but she was alive. Exhausted, Timothy slumped into a chair, his body trembling with fatigue. He accessed the galactic database, searching for information on the anonymous race that had saved Thea's life. The results were fragmented and incomplete. They called themselves the Elysians. They were a reclusive, nomadic people, rarely seen in galactic society. But one detail stood out. Ancient records hinted at a symbiotic relationship between the Elysians and the Voxari, a connection that predated the formation of the Galactic Senate. He began a new search. this time including information on the Elysians' ancient history. He began to understand the importance of the situation and the implications of its success. Hours passed. Timothy remained by Thea's side, monitoring her vital signs. Finally, her eyelids fluttered. Her eyes, the color of molten silver, flickered open. They focused on Timothy, a spark of recognition igniting within their depths. A faint, ethereal glow emanated from the wounds on Thea's chest, illuminating her skin with a soft, bioluminescent light. The sealant, combined with something else, was working. Slowly, weakly, Thea raised a hand. Her long, slender fingers reached out, gently touching Timothy's face. It was not a predatory gesture, but a sign of affection, gratitude, trust. The comm unit buzzed. It was Senator Vrook. His image flickered. "Aunt Doctor," he screamed, his face contorted with rage. "Doctor Walker, your insubordination will not go unpunished. You have endangered the entire station with your reckless actions. I am now submitting a motion to the Galactic Senate to immediately remove the Voxari from your care and authorize its termination. You will be held accountable for your crimes." The screen went black. Timothy stared at the blank display, his heart sinking. The battle was nowhere near the end. The senator would use this incident, twisting it to his advantage, to rally support for his xenophobic agenda. But Timothy knew one thing for sure: he would not give up. He would protect Thea, regardless of the cost. Thea blinked, her reptilian eyes focusing. Not with the unfocused gaze of an animal roused from sleep, but with a sharp, assessing intelligence that sent a shiver down Timothy's spine. She tilted her massive head, a low rumble vibrating in her chest, and her gaze settled on him. It wasn't the vacant stare of a predator, it was recognition. She shifted slightly on the padded platform, wincing. The movement was small, almost imperceptible, but it was deliberate. She was communicating. Timothy spoke softly. "Thea, can you understand me?" Her ears, delicate membranes stretched over bone, twitched. A pause. Then she subtly angled her head towards the sound of his voice, a flicker of understanding in her golden eyes. Each time Timothy spoke, Thea would turn her head slightly. She tried to vocalize, but only a strangled rasp escaped her throat, the result of damaged vocal cords. She strained, her body tensing, clearly frustrated by her inability to communicate. Crackling static filled Timothy's ears. He flinched, the sound pulling him back years. Back to a sterile lab, another alien creature, smaller, feathered, but just as vulnerable, hooked up to a bewildering array of machines. He could almost smell the antiseptic, feel the sweat on his brow. "Her brain structure is unique, Dr. Walker," the alien doctor, a being of shimmering light and flowing robes, had said, pointing to a holographic projection. "The neural pathways. They're unlike anything I've ever seen. It's as if she's capable of processing information on a level we can barely comprehend." Timothy shook off the memory, focusing on Thea. He couldn't fail her. Not again. The lab's comm screen flickered to life, displaying the stern face of Senator Vrook, a Zabrak whose horns seemed to bristle with indignation. "Dr. Walker," Vrook's voice boomed, amplified by the speakers, "your association with that creature is a grave threat to galactic security. I demand you surrender the Voxari immediately. Its study is of paramount importance." Timothy stood tall, meeting the senator's gaze with unwavering perseverance. "With all due respect, Senator, Thea is not a subject for study. She is a sentient being, and she deserves the same rights and freedoms as any other member of the galactic community." Vrook's face contorted in anger. "You are endangering us all. That beast is a menace." The screen went dark. A private comm channel opened. It was the alien doctor who had first examined Thea. His voice was low, urgent. "Dr. Walker, be warned, the senator. He is not a patient man. He will use force if necessary. Protect her." The line went dead. Timothy turned to his workstation, his fingers flying across the holographic keyboard. He needed to find a way to protect Thea. He scrolled through schematics, simulations flashing before his eyes, energy shields, force fields, sonic barriers. Human technology designed for human physiology. None of it was a perfect fit for Thea's unique biology. Thea watched him, her intelligent eyes following his every move. She rose, taking a halting step towards the console. Then, surprisingly, she reached out a clawed hand and gently nudged a holographic projector, rotating the image of a complex energy shielding generator. Timothy froze. He brought up the schematic Thea had pointed to, zooming in on the intricate details. It was a cutting-edge shield generator, capable of deflecting even the most powerful energy weapons. But it was designed for a starship, not a living creature. You understand this?" he asked, his voice filled with disbelief. Thea tilted her head again, then tapped a specific component on the holographic display, a focusing array designed to channel the energy field. Timothy stared at the schematic, then back at Thea. It was impossible, and yet, he threw himself into the work, fueled by adrenaline and a desperate hope. He rerouted power conduits, recalibrated energy frequencies, and modified the shield matrix, adapting the technology to Thea's physiology. Sparks flew, circuits overloaded, and the air crackled with uncontrolled energy. Time blurred into a frantic race against the inevitable. Suddenly, a klaxon blared through the facility. Red lights flashed, bathing the lab in an ominous glow. A synthesized voice announced, "Security lockdown initiated. Unauthorized personnel detected. All sectors sealed." Thea tensed, her body trembling. She bared her teeth, a low growl rumbling in her chest. She knew they were coming. Timothy ignored the alarms, his hands working feverishly on the final modifications. The energy shield generator sputtered, its core fluctuating wildly. It was unstable, on the verge of catastrophic failure. Thea moved closer, her bioluminescent markings glowing brighter. Without hesitation, she reached out and placed her hand directly on the generator's core. A surge of energy pulsed through her body, then flowed into the device. The fluctuations stabilized. The generator hummed, its power output evening out. Timothy stared in amazement. You stabilized it." He didn't have time to ponder the how. He smacked his palm on the activation switch. A shimmering field of energy erupted from the generator, enveloping Thea in a protective cocoon. The shield pulsed with power, deflecting stray energy blasts and creating a visible barrier against the encroaching threat. A deafening crash echoed through the facility. The Senator's forces had breached the outer defenses. Heavy footsteps pounded down the corridor, growing closer. Then, a voice, clear and resonant, cut through the chaos. It was Thea. "Protect," she said, the word echoing in the lab, a testament to her intelligence and her growing bond with Timothy. As if in response, a holographic image flickered into existence beside the comm screen, a sleek, alien vessel, unlike anything Timothy had ever seen. A synthesized voice, calm and measured, spoke. "Dr. Walker, we have been observing your actions. We offer you and the Voxari sanctuary, a world where you will both be safe." Timothy stared at the hologram, his mind blown. Who were these aliens? Could he trust them? Or was this just another trap? He looked at Thea, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and trust. He looked back at the approaching soldiers, the Senator's pawns, ready to seize her. He had a choice to make, a choice that would determine not only his fate but Thea's as well. Trust the unknown or fight a battle he couldn't possibly win. Trust the unknown or fight a battle he couldn't possibly win. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat urging him to fight, to protect. But protect whom? Thea, or himself, his own fragile ego bruised by past failures. He tasted bile, the familiar tang of fear. The Senator's smug face swam in his vision, a predator closing in. Stay here and Thea would become a weapon, a tool for destruction. Then a gentle pressure on his hand. Thea's large, scaled hand rested on his, her golden eyes, usually so fierce, now soft with a quiet understanding. She looked from him to the open ramp of the alien ship, a silent question. not fear but trust in him. An alien apex predator trusting a human. The weight of that trust settled him. The senator he knew. His cruelty, his ambition were predictable. These aliens, they were an unknown, but Thea trusted him to choose. "Stand down," Timothy said, his voice hoarse but firm. He addressed the remaining GPS personnel. "Do not resist Senator Volkov. Let him have the facility. We're leaving." Confusion rippled through the small group, but they knew better than to question him in a crisis. Within moments, alien hands, surprisingly gentle, guided Timothy and Thea towards the ship. He risked a glance back. Senator Volkov's forces were already breaching the outer perimeter, weapons raised. He caught a glimpse of the senator's face, contorted with fury, before the ramp hissed shut, sealing them inside. "Walker, you can't escape me." The senator's amplified voice echoed through the closing doors, fading into static. "I will find you, and that beast will be mine." Then, a lurch, a dizzying shift, and the world outside dissolved into streaks of light. Hyperspace. Timothy staggered, grabbing for a handhold as his stomach churned. Thea, too, swayed, a low whine escaping her throat. Her breathing grew ragged. He tried to speak to the aliens, to ask about Thea, about their destination, but the words died in his throat. Their language was a series of clicks and whistles, utterly incomprehensible. He gestured, pointed to Thea, hoping they understood her distress. They responded with nods and soothing sounds, but offered no concrete assistance. Then, the ship projected images onto a nearby wall, a vibrant world teeming with life. Towering trees draped with luminous vines, creatures with iridescent scales flitting through the air, bodies of water shimmering with bioluminescent organisms. A sanctuary, but as the images played, Timothy noticed Thea growing weaker. Her gait faltered, her eyes glazed over. She leaned heavily against him, her body trembling. Was it the stress of the journey, the ship's atmosphere? Something was terribly wrong. A cold dread washed over him. He remembered another alien creature, years ago, a gentle herbivore he tried to save from poachers. He'd been so confident, so sure he could make a difference. But he'd miscalculated, made mistakes. The creature had died in his arms, a victim of his arrogance. This was different. He and Thea. They had a connection, a bond forged in shared trauma, in mutual respect. He wouldn't fail her again. With a jarring lurch, the ship exited hyperspace. Before them hung a planet bathed in the soft glow of a binary sun. It was beautiful, undeniably, but silent, too silent. An unnatural stillness permeated the scene, and the energy readings. They flickered erratically, like a faulty heartbeat. As the ship descended towards a designated landing zone, Timothy scanned the jungle below. Something moved. Not the graceful sway of branches in the wind, not the scurrying of animals. Something else. A flicker of movement at the edge of his vision, too fast to properly register. He turned to Thea, his unease palpable. "Something's not right," he murmured, his voice barely a whisper. Thea tensed, her nostrils flaring. She emitted a low, guttural growl, a sound that vibrated deep in Timothy's chest. Her snout pointed towards the dense jungle, towards the source of the unnatural silence. She sensed it too. Danger. The ramp lowered with a hiss, releasing them into the humid air. As their feet touched the alien soil, the jungle erupted, not with the sounds of life but with the clatter of bone. Creatures constructed of polished bone, with glowing red eyes and razor-sharp teeth, surged from the undergrowth. They weren't animals. They were constructs. Timothy barely had time to raise his weapon before the air filled with the crackle of energy fire and the shattering of bone. He spun, firing, taking down several of the creatures, but they kept coming, an endless tide of skeletal horrors. Then silence. The remaining bone constructs lay in pieces, their glowing eyes extinguished, and standing before them a humanoid figure, tall and imposing, clad in armor of obsidian. A booming voice echoed through the clearing. "Welcome, travelers," the figure said, his voice resonating with an unnatural power. "This world is no sanctuary. It is a testing ground. Only the strong survive." Only the strong survive. The humanoid figure's voice echoed through the jungle clearing, amplified by unseen technology. This sanctuary world, the voice continued, now tinged with a metallic edge, was designed to accelerate evolution, to weed out the weak, and to forge stronger, more resilient species. You, the voice turned accusatory, were brought here specifically to be tested. Your strengths, your weaknesses, all will be laid bare. The bone creatures, pulverized moments before, began to twitch. Fragments scraped against the damp earth, pulling themselves together with unnatural speed. Sockets reformed, spines reconnected, and within seconds the skeletal horrors were reforming, a testament to their horrifying resilience. Thea, despite the ragged gashes across her flank and the tremor in her massive frame, instinctively shifted, placing herself between Timothy and the creatures. A low growl rumbled in her chest, a primal promise of protection. The alien ship's crew, recovering from the initial shock, raised their energy rifles. Bolts of plasma sizzled through the air, striking the bone creatures, but the constructs barely flinched. The energy dissipated harmlessly against their porous surfaces. Frustration etched itself onto the aliens' faces. Their advanced weaponry was proving useless. Timothy, however, was watching the creatures closely. He noticed the way the skeletal structures vibrated with each impact, the way the energy seemed to dissipate rather than inflict damage. A memory flickered in his mind, a similar weakness in certain crystalline life forms back on Earth, a vulnerability to specific sonic frequencies. "Give me your translator," Timothy barked, snatching the device from the nearest alien. He rapidly navigated the menus, his fingers flying across the unfamiliar interface. "I need a high-frequency generator, now." He quickly programmed the device to emit a focused beam of high-frequency sound, targeting one of the reforming creatures. The overseer's voice crackled with surprise. Ingenious human adaptability, a valuable trait. The effect was immediate. The targeted bone creature shuddered violently, its skeletal structure vibrating uncontrollably. Cracks spiderwebbed across its surface, and with a final, shattering screech, it collapsed into a pile of dust. Thea, understanding Timothy's intent, tilted her head, focusing her own formidable vocal cords. A low, guttural hum emanated from her, resonating with the frequency emitted by the translator, amplifying it tenfold. The remaining bone creatures disintegrated, their unholy forms dissolving into dust. The overseer's voice, now imbued with a hint of irritation, echoed through the clearing. This was merely the first test. More difficult trials await. Then, silence. Timothy surveyed the area. The jungle, once seemingly benign, now felt oppressive, teeming with unseen threats. He noticed subtle shifts in the foliage, pressure plates hidden beneath the leaf litter and glinting wires strung between the trees. This wasn't a sanctuary. It was a death trap. The alien crew tended to their wounded, their faces grim. Their superior technology had failed them, and they were now relying on a human and a monster for survival. Timothy knelt beside a pile of dust that had once been a bone creature. He sifted through the remains, his fingers brushing against something hard and angular. He pulled it free, a crystalline shard, pulsing with a faint, inner light, the energy source. He turned to find Thea swaying on her feet. Her breathing was ragged and dark stains were spreading across her fur. Her wounds were worsening in this alien environment. He knew they needed shelter and fast. One of the aliens, a female with intricate tattoos adorning her face, gestured towards a dark opening in the cliff face, half hidden by dense vegetation. "Structure," she grunted, her voice strained. "Shelter. Medical." Inside, the air was thick with the smell of stale antiseptic. The structure was small, barely large enough to accommodate them all. Basic medical equipment lined the walls, automated injectors, nutrient dispensers, and a flickering holographic display. The display showed grainy images of other species, trapped, injured, and fighting for survival in the same jungle, records of past tests. Timothy scrolled through the files, his stomach churning. The vast majority of the test subjects hadn't survived. This wasn't a test, it was a slaughter. He found a schematic of the testing ground, a sprawling map of interconnected zones, each marked with a hazard rating. The zone they were currently in was classified as moderate. Others were labeled severe, extreme, and lethal. A thin, red line snaked across the map, indicating a potential escape route, but it led directly through the lethal zone. Thea, her violet eyes clouded with pain, weakly touched the map with a massive paw. She looked up at Timothy, a silent plea in her gaze. They had to escape. Timothy and Thea hunched over the tattered map. The flimsoplast felt brittle beneath Timothy's fingers, the etched lines worn smooth in places. He traced the escape route, a jagged path snaking through the emerald jungle. "It's longer than I thought," he muttered, the dim emergency lighting reflecting in his worried eyes. He estimated at least 3 days of hard travel, assuming the overseer hadn't further complicated things. The alien crew, a motley assortment of Grith and Xyler, shuffled nervously behind them. Grok, the Grith captain, a hulking figure with chitinous plates, grunted. "We provide limited supplies." An escort, part of way, no further. He gestured to a crate containing nutrient paste, a coil of rope, and a handful of energy cells. The Xyler, smaller and more agile, kept their multifaceted eyes fixed on Thea, their antennae twitching with unease. Fear, even begrudging assistance, was still fear. As they stepped out of the makeshift shelter and into the jungle, the air hung thick and heavy, a suffocating blanket of humidity and decay. The canopy overhead blotted out most of the light, casting the forest floor in perpetual twilight. The air vibrated with the drone of unseen insects and the rustle of unseen things. The smell was overpowering, a cloying mix of damp earth, rotting vegetation, and something vaguely metallic. Thea moved with a newfound confidence, her head held high, nostrils flared. She paused, sniffing the air, then veered sharply to the left. Timothy followed, trusting her instincts. "Traps," she rumbled, her voice a low growl. "Hidden, deep." He couldn't see anything, his human senses far too limited to perceive the subtle disturbances in the undergrowth that Thea so easily detected. After an hour, Timothy frowned, comparing the map to their surroundings. "Something's not right. This ravine. It should be here, but it's not." He pointed to a cluster of bioluminescent fungi that were marked as a landmark. They were present, but the surrounding terrain was completely different. The map was inaccurate, deliberately so, he suspected. A voice, cold and disembodied, echoed through the jungle, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Enjoying your little trek, Walker. Don't get too comfortable. The real trials are just beginning." The overseer. His words were a chilling reminder that they were being watched, manipulated. The ground began to undulate beneath their feet, the trees swaying at unnatural angles. A wave of dizziness washed over Timothy, his stomach lurching. The gravity was fluctuating, pulling him in different directions. He stumbled, grabbing onto a nearby vine to steady himself. Thea grunted, her powerful muscles straining against the invisible force. "Counterweights," Timothy gasped, his mind racing. He rummaged through the meager supplies, pulling out the coil of rope and several fist-sized rocks. Working quickly, he fashioned makeshift weights, distributing them around his body to counteract the gravitational distortions. It was a crude solution, but it seemed to work, allowing him to move with slightly more stability. Thea, however, was not faring so well. The gravitational stress was exacerbating her wounds. Dark crimson blood began to seep through the bandages on her leg, staining her fur. She hissed in pain, her breath coming in ragged gasps. They reached a chasm, a yawning abyss that plunged into darkness. Spanning the gap was a rickety bridge constructed of decaying wood and frayed cables. Scattered at the bottom of the chasm were the skeletal remains of creatures and the twisted wreckage of previous attempts to cross. As they cautiously stepped onto the bridge, the wood groaned ominously beneath their weight. One of the cables snapped with a sharp twang, sending splinters flying. The bridge lurched violently, throwing them off balance. They had to move, and fast. The alien crew, their eyes wide with terror, stopped dead in their tracks. "No further," Grok shouted, his voice cracking with fear. "Too dangerous, we turn back." Without waiting for a response, they turned and fled back into the jungle, abandoning Timothy and Thea to their fate. Timothy and Thea pressed on, running across the collapsing bridge. Another cable snapped, sending the bridge tilting precariously. They scrambled forward, their fingers digging into the rotting wood. They made it to the other side just as the entire structure gave way, plunging into the darkness below. They stumbled into a darkened cave, the air thick with a strange, sweet-smelling mist. It swirled around them, clinging to their skin like a damp shroud. Thea coughed, her eyes widening in alarm. Suddenly, Thea froze, her body trembling. Her eyes glazed over and she began to growl, a low, guttural sound that resonated deep in her chest. Images flashed through her mind. The cold, sterile lab, the cruel faces of her captors, the agonizing pain of the experiments. She saw the cages, the restraints, the prodding instruments. It was all coming back, a torrent of repressed trauma unleashed by the hallucinogenic mist. Her claws extended, ripping through the fabric of her bandages. Timothy reached out, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Thea, it's okay, it's just the mist. You're safe now, I'm here." He spoke softly, his voice calm and reassuring, trying to break through the haze of her fear. He reminded her of their bond, of their shared goal, of the hope that awaited them on the other side. They stumbled into a hidden chamber where a holographic image flickered to life. It was the Overseer, his face a mask of cold indifference. "Welcome, Walker," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "I trust you're enjoying my little test. The mist, you see, is designed to exploit your deepest fears, to break your will. Let's see if you can overcome your own personal demons, shall we?" As he spoke, a swarm of robotic drones descended from the ceiling, their metallic bodies gleaming in the dim light. Each drone was armed with an energy weapon, its barrel glowing with deadly potential. The Overseer laughed, a hollow, mocking sound. "Let the games begin." The drones opened fire, energy bolts searing through the air. Timothy and Thea dove for cover, narrowly avoiding the deadly blasts. Timothy realized the drones weren't just firing randomly. They were targeting specific weak points, exploiting their fears and vulnerabilities. Each drone was programmed to mirror their deepest anxieties. He noticed the drones were drawn to the dark and repelled by light. "The light, Thea!" Timothy yelled, grabbing a discarded energy cell. He smashed it against the cave wall, creating a blinding flash of light. The drones stuttered, their movements erratic. They were programmed to fear the light, a primal instinct buried deep within their artificial intelligence. The high-pitched whine that had been grating on their nerves vanished, replaced by a thick, unsettling silence. The drones, inert sentinels, stood motionless in the swirling mist, their multifaceted eyes dark. But the silence was a false reprieve. The mist, no longer illuminated by the drone's sickly green light, seemed to intensify, clinging to Timothy's skin like a damp shroud. He raised a hand, his fingers disappearing into the swirling vapor only inches from his face. "Thea, stay close." They moved cautiously through the field of deactivated drones, their metal bodies cold and smooth to the touch. The air hung heavy, thick with the metallic tang of ozone and something else. Something acrid and unsettling that tickled at the back of Timothy's throat. Suddenly, Thea recoiled, a guttural snarl ripping from her throat. She swiped a massive paw at the empty air, her eyes wide with terror. "Get away from me. No more, please." Timothy reached out, his voice calm and steady. "Thea, it's me." "It's Timothy, you're safe." She didn't see him. Her gaze was fixed on some unseen horror, her body trembling. "The needles, the pain, stop it." She lashed out again, her claws narrowly missing Timothy's face. He stumbled back, instinctively raising his arms to protect himself. He knew better than to fight her, not in this state. Drawing on the techniques he'd studied, the calming vocalizations of the Graxonites, the rhythmic breathing exercises of the Sylvans, he lowered himself to the ground, making himself smaller, less threatening. "Thea," he repeated, his voice a low, soothing drone. "I am not your captor, I am your friend. You are safe. Breathe with me." Slowly, agonizingly, Thea's breathing began to match his. Her eyes flickered, and for a fleeting moment recognition sparked within them. "Timothy," she rasped, her voice barely a whisper. He's in my head, the overseer. He's manipulating my memories, and he can hear us." A shiver ran down Timothy's spine. They were not alone. He scanned their surroundings. Behind a particularly large drone, its power core now dark, he noticed a seam in the wall, a hidden passage, barely visible in the swirling mist. "Come on," he urged, pulling Thea to her feet. "Let's get out of here." They squeezed through the narrow opening, finding themselves in a dimly lit tunnel. But the mist was here too, only different. This mist wasn't just disorienting, it felt physical. It amplified every sensation, turning a gentle breeze into an icy gale, a minor ache into a searing inferno. Thea cried out, clutching her head. "It burns, everything burns." Her heightened senses, normally her greatest strength, were now her greatest weakness. The amplified pain threatened to overwhelm her. Timothy felt it too, a throbbing ache in his joints, a stinging in his eyes, but it was nothing compared to what Thea was experiencing. He fumbled with his multi-tool, switching it to diagnostic mode. He scanned the air, searching for the frequency of the amplified sensations. "Hang on," he said, his voice strained. He began to experiment, adjusting the frequency output of his multi-tool. Slowly, agonizingly, the pain began to recede. He created a small, localized safe zone around them, a bubble of relative calm in the sensory storm. They pressed on, following the tunnel until it opened into a large chamber. The walls were lined with complex machinery, blinking lights, and rows upon rows of deactivated drones. In the center of the chamber stood a massive control panel, its surface covered in alien glyphs and holographic displays. Timothy approached the panel cautiously, running his hand over its cool surface. He activated his translator, and the glyphs determination into comprehensible schematics. "This is it," he said, his voice filled with a mixture of awe and dread. Schematics of the entire prison complex, and a possible route to the surface. The schematics revealed a terrifying truth. The prison wasn't just built into the planet, it was built around something. A massive active volcano, its geothermal energy powering the entire facility. Suddenly, a voice boomed through the chamber, cold and devoid of emotion. "Impressive, Timothy Walker. I congratulate you on your progress, but know this, the volcano is the final test. Only the worthy may ascend." The control panel flickered and a new alarm blared. From vents in the ceiling, a swarm of insects descended, their bodies shimmering with an iridescent green light. They were unlike anything Timothy had ever seen, their mandibles dripping with a viscous fluid. "Genetically modified," Thea gasped, her voice weak. "They feed on fear, and their venom paralyzes." The insects swarmed towards them, their buzzing wings creating a deafening cacophony. Timothy acted instinctively, grabbing Thea's hand and dragging her towards a nearby lava vent. The heat was intense, radiating outwards in scorching waves. The insects hesitated, their buzzing intensifying. They couldn't tolerate the extreme temperatures. They swirled around the edges of the heat zone, their hunger warring with their aversion to the flame. Thea, despite her pain, was regaining control. She closed her eyes, focusing her senses. "There's something nearby," she said, her voice barely audible above the roar of the volcano. "A hidden chamber, pulsing with a strange energy." They followed her lead, navigating through the maze of machinery until they reached a section of the wall that seemed different. The stone was smoother, warmer to the touch. With a grunt of effort, Timothy pushed against the wall and a section of it slid open, revealing a hidden chamber. Inside, bathed in an ethereal glow, stood a crystalline structure, its facets shimmering with an otherworldly light. It resonated with Thea, a deep, harmonic vibration that seemed to reach into her very soul. As she touched the crystal, a flood of memories washed over her, images of her ancestors, of a proud and noble race, of a world teeming with life. And then the truth. The Overseer's experiments weren't just about control, they were about weaponization. He was trying to unlock and exploit the Voxari's genetic traits for his own twisted purposes. The crystal showed her a vision of the volcano, not as a source of energy, but as a weapon, designed to unleash a cataclysmic eruption that would destroy the planet. Suddenly, the chamber began to shake violently. The ground buckled beneath their feet and the air filled with the acrid smell of sulfur. The final phase is about to begin, the Overseer's voice echoed through the chamber, filled with triumph. The lava will cleanse all impurities. Timothy grabbed the artifact, its surface burning with an intense heat. We have to get out of here. They raced towards the exit, but as they reached it, the ceiling collapsed, burying the passage in a shower of rock and molten slag. They were trapped. The chamber groaned, a guttural sound that resonated deep within their bones. Molten rock sloshed against the edges of the cavern, casting grotesque shadows that danced with the flickering light. The air, thick with the stench of sulfur, vibrated with an unseen energy. The artifact pulsed in Thea's grasp, its light intensifying, mirroring the growing intensity of the lava's glow. Timothy, his face slick with sweat, shouted over the din. "It's resonating with the chamber's energy. We need to do something, and fast." His eyes darted around, searching for any solution amidst the chaos. Without hesitation, Timothy grabbed the crystal from Thea. "Here goes nothing," he muttered, hefting the artifact. He hurled it into the heart of the nearest lava flow. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the lava hissed, a plume of superheated steam erupting skyward. Where the crystal had landed, the molten rock began to cool, a crust forming with unnatural speed. The cooling spread outwards, creating a dark, obsidian-like shell across the lava's surface. "It's working," Timothy yelled, relief flooding his features. "It's altering the lava's composition." A precarious path, shimmering with residual heat, solidified before them, leading upwards towards a crack in the cavern ceiling. Thea, her eyes glowing with an inner light, gripped Timothy's arm. "This way," she rasped, her voice imbued with an unfamiliar authority. "The ancestors, they guide me." Images flooded her mind, fragmented memories of the volcano's creation, the pathways forged by ancient geothermal flows. They stepped onto the newly formed path, the solidified lava groaning beneath their weight. Heat radiated upwards, even through Timothy's insulated boots. The air grew thicker, heavier, each breath a struggle. The path twisted and turned, a treacherous ascent through the heart of the volcano. The path opened into a narrow tunnel, barely wide enough for them to squeeze through. The geothermal tunnel network pressed in on them, the rock radiating heat that scorched their skin. Humidity clung to them like a shroud, making each movement a laborious effort. Thea paused, her head cocked to one side. A low growl rumbled in her chest. "Traps," she hissed. "The energy. It sings to me, warning of danger." Her eyes, usually the color of jade, glowed with an unnatural intensity, pupils dilated, taking in more than Timothy could possibly perceive. Suddenly, the tunnel floor beneath them trembled. A section of the ceiling gave way, sending a cascade of rocks and debris tumbling down. "Rock slide," Timothy shouted, diving for cover behind a protruding rock formation. As the dust settled, Timothy pulled out his multi-tool, its sensors scanning the tunnel walls. "The Overseer," he muttered. "He's rigged this whole place with booby traps. Pressure plates, tripwires. The works." Working quickly, Timothy used the multi-tool to identify and disarm the triggers, his fingers flying across the device's interface. Meanwhile, Thea, her muscles bulging, heaved massive boulders aside, clearing a path through the debris. Her strength, amplified by the artifact's energy, was astonishing. They pressed onward, deeper into the tunnel network. Then a deafening hiss filled the air. High-pressure steam erupted from vents in the walls, scalding vapor filling the tunnel. "Steam vents," Timothy cried, shielding his face. "Get down," Thea roared, a sound that vibrated through the very rock. Focusing her energy, she unleashed a concentrated sonic blast, shattering the steam pipes. The tunnel shook violently and a section of the ceiling collapsed. This time the cave-in was different. A massive slab of rock slammed down, sealing off the tunnel ahead and separating Timothy from Thea. "Thea!" Timothy yelled, his voice muffled by the rockfall. "Silence!" He clawed at the debris, his fingers scraping against the unyielding stone. Panic gnawed at him. The air grew thin and a crushing weight pressed down on his chest, both physically and emotionally. He was trapped. His vision blurred, the edges of his consciousness fading. The last thing he saw was the darkness, punctuated by the artifact's faint glow. Then a tremor shook the ground. A monstrous roar echoed through the tunnel. With a sound like the earth itself tearing apart, the massive slab of rock was lifted, pulverized, and flung aside. Thea stood before him, her eyes blazing with concern. She reached down, her powerful hand gently pulling him to his feet. "Timothy," she said, her voice filled with worry. "We must go, now." They emerged into a hidden chamber, bathed in the eerie green glow of geothermal energy. Complex machinery hummed and whirred, regulating the volcano's internal systems. Suddenly, a holographic display flickered to life. A cold, emotionless AI interface materialized before them, its voice dripping with disdain. "Intruders," the Overseer's AI sneered. "Your interference is regrettable. However, it is also futile. The volcano's eruption sequence has been initiated. Your efforts to prevent it have merely accelerated the process." Thea snarled, her claws flexing. "We will stop you." "A valiant sentiment," the AI countered, "but ultimately meaningless. The regulators are protected by a force field. Your primitive abilities are no match for my defenses." Thea focused her sonic powers, unleashing a barrage of energy at the shimmering barrier. But the force field held, deflecting her attacks with ease. Timothy, ignoring the AI's taunts, was already working. His multi-tool hummed as it scanned the force field's frequency. Lines of code scrolled across the device's screen as he analyzed the energy signature. "There," he muttered, his fingers flying across the controls. "A harmonic counter-frequency. It should disrupt the field." He aimed the multi-tool at the force field and fired. The air crackled with energy, and the shimmering barrier flickered, then vanished. "Now, Thea," Timothy shouted. Thea unleashed a deafening roar, focusing all her sonic energy on the regulators. The machinery buckled, sparks flying as the system overloaded. The geothermal energy surged uncontrollably, disrupting the volcano's delicate balance. The chamber began to shake violently. The Overseer's AI flickered, its voice distorted with panic. "Failsafe mechanism active. The volcano's core is destabilizing. Catastrophic eruption imminent." Thea staggered back, clutching her head. Images flooded her mind, visions of a catastrophic explosion, the island consumed by fire and ash. "The failsafe," she gasped, her voice filled with dread. "It will force an overcharged eruption cycle." A tremor ran through the chamber. Cracks spiderwebbed across the walls. A section of the tunnel entrance crumbled, sending a shower of rock and dust cascading down. "It's not just disabling it," Thea said, her voice tight with urgency. "The fail-safe. It's going to trigger a chain reaction, a super eruption." Timothy stared at her, the implications crashing down on him like the very rocks around them. A super eruption. Not just a localized disaster, but a planetary catastrophe. The mission had just changed. Survival trumped sabotage. Thea closed her eyes, her nostrils flaring as she inhaled deeply. "This way," she said, her voice regaining its strength. "The artifact. It shows me the safest path, for now." They moved quickly, Thea leading the way with an almost preternatural sense of direction. Timothy risked a glance at the tunnel walls. Veins of shimmering, unstable minerals laced the rock like glittering poison. The rock felt like it might crumble in his hand. One wrong tremor, one stray vibration, and the whole place could come down on them. "Thea, watch the walls," he warned. "They're unstable." Thea stopped, her eyes fixed on a section of the tunnel ahead. "There," she said, pointing with a claw. "That section, it's critical, about to collapse." She took a deep breath, focusing her energy. A low hum emanated from her throat, building into a focused sonic blast that struck the weakened rock. The vibration stabilized the area, the shimmering veins dimming slightly. "Go," she urged, and they pressed on. They rounded a bend and stopped short. A massive chasm yawned before them, the air thick with the stench of sulfur. Far below, rivers of lava snaked through the darkness, casting an orange glow on the jagged walls. The heat washed over them in waves. There was no way across. Thea stood at the edge, her eyes unfocused. A faint tremor ran through her body. I see it," she murmured, her voice distant. "A bridge, a Voxari bridge, ancient. It was here, long ago." The vision seemed to pull her under, her muscles slackening. Then she blinked, snapping back to reality. "There," she said, pointing to a section of the chasm wall. "The supports, they're still there." Timothy pulled out his multi-tool, activating its geological scanner. He ran it along the chasm wall, the device beeping and whirring. "She's right," he said, his voice tight with excitement. "Weak points. Remnants of a natural rock bridge, but it's unstable. We'd need to trigger a controlled collapse." Thea nodded, understanding flashing in her eyes. She braced herself, focusing her sonic abilities. "Stand back," she warned. Timothy retreated, watching as Thea unleashed a series of focused sonic blasts at the weak points in the chasm wall. The rock groaned and shuddered, dust and debris raining down. With a final, deafening crack, a section of the wall gave way, collapsing inward to form a precarious, makeshift bridge across the chasm. "Now!" Thea shouted, and they ran. The bridge swayed and buckled beneath their weight, tremors shaking the entire structure. Lava splashed below, sending plumes of superheated steam into the air. They scrambled across, their hearts pounding in their chests, barely making it to the other side as the last of the bridge crumbled into the lava. Thea stumbled, her legs giving way beneath her. She collapsed onto the ground, gasping for breath. I can't." She managed, her voice weak. Timothy knelt beside her, concern etched on his face. She had pushed herself too hard. He knew he had to get her moving, but she was spent. He heaved her up, supporting her weight. "I've got you," he said, his voice firm. "We're not stopping now." He adjusted his grip and started to carry her, her weight surprisingly manageable. As they moved forward, a new threat emerged. A swarm of small, chitinous creatures scuttled across the tunnel floor, their bodies glowing with an internal heat. Lava mites, creatures adapted to the extreme temperatures of the volcano's depths. Timothy lowered Thea gently to the ground, keeping her close. He recognized the telltale signs of their aggression: clicking mandibles, raised antennae, the unmistakable scent of burning minerals. He quickly accessed his xenobiology database, searching for a weakness. "Sonic aversion," he muttered to himself. "Highly sensitive to specific frequencies." He adjusted his multi-tool, configuring it to emit a low-frequency sonic pulse. The mites recoiled, their glowing bodies flickering. He fine-tuned the frequency, and the swarm began to disperse, retreating into the cracks and crevices of the tunnel wall. "Let's go," he said, hoisting Thea back into his arms. They pressed onward, finally reaching the volcano's caldera. The surface world was alien, twisted by the artifact's power. Jagged obsidian peaks pierced the sky, and the air crackled with geothermal energy. The landscape was scarred and barren, a testament to the raw power contained within the volcano. Suddenly, a high-pitched whine filled the air. Overseer drones. They emerged from the smoke and ash, their weapons trained on Timothy and Thea. Thea was right, they were a threat to the mission. "Take cover." Timothy shouted, diving behind a cluster of geothermal vents. He pulled Thea down with him, the vents hissing a ND Chinese letter steam around them. The drones opened fire, laser bolts scorching the rock. Thea groaned, struggling to sit up. "My head," she mumbled. "Stay down," Timothy ordered. He peered around the vent, assessing the situation. They were pinned down, but the vents offered some protection. An idea sparked in his mind. "Thea," he said, "can you disrupt their targeting systems?" She looked at him, her eyes clearing. "Sonic, yes, I can try." She closed her eyes, focusing her energy. A wave of sonic energy rippled outwards, distorting the air around them. The drones wobbled in the sky, their movements erratic. Two of them collided, crashing to the ground in a shower of sparks. "Again," Timothy urged. Thea unleashed another sonic blast, and more drones spiraled out of control, plummeting into the caldera. The remaining drones retreated, disappearing into the smoke. Timothy helped Thea to her feet. "We need to get out of here," he said, scanning the area. His gaze fell upon a small, metallic structure nestled against the caldera wall. "An emergency evacuation system," he breathed. "There." They raced towards the structure, finding a single escape pod, its hatch open and inviting. Timothy's hope soared, then plummeted. The pod was tiny, barely large enough for one person. "It only holds one," he said, his voice flat. Thea stared at the pod, then back at Timothy. The reality of their situation crashed down upon them. A difficult decision had to be made. "You have to take it," Timothy said, his voice firm. "You're the only one who knows about the super eruption. You have to warn the galaxy." Thea shook her head, her eyes filled with defiance. "I won't leave you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "We're in this together." She stepped closer and embraced him tightly. As they held each other, Timothy's gaze swept across the caldera. A plume of superheated air rose from the center of the volcano, creating a powerful thermal updraft. An idea sparked in his mind, a desperate, improbable plan. The thermal updraft. "We can use it," Timothy said, his voice raspy, pointing towards the swirling air currents rising from the volcano's caldera. "My multi-tool can generate a rudimentary frame. We can make a glider just enough to get us out of here." Thea, slumped against a jagged rock, barely managed a nod. Her breath came in ragged gasps. "Sonic. Shape." "Frame," she rasped, her voice weaker than he'd ever heard it. Working quickly, Timothy deployed his multi-tool. A shimmering energy field materialized, outlining a triangular shape. He reinforced the edges with salvaged metal struts from the wrecked facility. Thea, with a monumental effort, focused her remaining energy. A low hum emanated from her throat, and the energy field bent and molded, taking on a more aerodynamic curve. Sweat beaded on her brow, and her sonic hum faltered, then ceased. She collapsed back against the rock, utterly spent. That's all I have," she whispered. The glider was crude, fragile, but it was their only hope. Timothy hefted it, testing its weight. "Hold on tight," he said, positioning Thea carefully within the frame. They launched themselves into the updraft. The glider bucked and shuddered, threatening to tear apart. The wind screamed in Timothy's ears as he fought to maintain control, adjusting the makeshift rudders with frantic movements. Below, the overseer's drones swarmed like angry insects, their energy weapons charging. Violet energy bolts lanced towards them, tearing through the glider's flimsy wings. Metal shrieked and twisted. Thea, despite her exhaustion, unleashed a series of focused sonic blasts, deflecting several of the energy bolts. Each blast visibly weakened her, her body trembling with the effort. A lucky shot clipped the glider's stabilizer. The craft spun violently, plummeting towards the mutated landscape below. They crashed just outside the volcano's perimeter, the impact jarring every bone in Timothy's body. He scrambled to his feet, pulling Thea from the wreckage. The landscape was alien, nightmarish. Giant, pulsating fungi towered over them, casting the ground in an eerie, bioluminescent glow. Twisted, thorny vines snaked across the ground, and the air thrummed with the drone of unseen insects. The artifact's activation had irrevocably transformed the environment. Thea shuddered, her eyes wide. Life, many, strange, she whispered, her voice filled with a primal unease. Familiar, unfamiliar. Timothy activated his multi-tool scanner, analyzing the surrounding flora and fauna. Mutated, highly unstable, he muttered, reading the data. Toxic spores, aggressive predators, but also potential food sources. A rustling in the undergrowth drew their attention. A group of small creatures emerged, their bodies covered in iridescent scales and bioluminescent markings. They were unlike anything Timothy had ever seen. They hesitated, their large, multifaceted eyes fixed on Thea. Timothy raised his weapon, but the creatures didn't attack. Instead, they seemed drawn to Thea, their movements becoming calmer, their bioluminescence dimming slightly. Herbivores, Timothy realized, lowering his weapon. And, Thea, your energy signature, it's soothing them. The ground vibrated. The Overseer's heavily armored vehicle crashed through the mutated vegetation, its energy cannons trained on them. We have to move, Timothy said, grabbing Thea's arm. They plunged into a dense forest of mutated vegetation. Giant, fleshy leaves slapped against their faces, and thorny vines snagged at their clothes. The Overseer's vehicle lumbered behind them, its cannons tearing through the foliage. Timothy spotted a cluster of bulbous plants with thick, sticky sap. Distraction, he said, firing his multi-tool at the plants. They exploded, showering the vehicle in the viscous sap, momentarily obscuring its vision. Thea stumbled, collapsing against a giant fungal stalk. Cannot anymore, she gasped, her voice barely audible. Safe, haven, far, west. Timothy knelt beside her, his heart sinking. He knew she was at her limit. He hoisted her onto his back, adjusting her weight. Then west we go, he said, his voice firm despite the tremor in his muscles. He carried her through the dense forest, his legs burning, his breath ragged. The mutated vegetation clawed at him, and the Overseer's vehicle was never far behind. Finally, they reached the edge of a cliff. Below, a vast, mutated landscape stretched out before them, a tapestry of bizarre flora and fauna under a sickly green sky. Behind them, the Overseer's vehicle blocked their path, its energy cannons glowing menacingly. This is it, Timothy said, his voice tight. He looked at Thea, her face pale and drawn. One last push. Thea, gathering the last vestiges of her strength, focused her sonic abilities on the cliff face. Timothy aimed his multi-tool, amplifying the vibrations. With a deafening roar, the cliff collapsed, sending a cascade of rock and mutated vegetation crashing down on the Overseer's vehicle. As the dust settled, a large, floating fungal platform drifted into view, carried by the thermal updraft. Without hesitation, Timothy jumped onto the platform, pulling Thea with him. They floated upwards, leaving the Overseer buried beneath the landslide. Below, the mutated landscape stretched out before them, an uncertain future beckoning in the eerie green light. They were airborne, alone, and utterly vulnerable. The fungal platform, a bioluminescent raft adrift in a sea of swirling, toxic mist. Timothy crouched, his boots sinking slightly into the spongy surface. He ran a hand along the edge, feeling the uneven texture, the damp coolness clinging to his skin. The air hung thick with the cloying sweetness of decay, overlaid with a metallic tang he couldn't quite place. Beside him, Thea shifted, her massive frame tense. Her nostrils flared, sampling the air with a low growl rumbling in her chest. He could feel the vibrations through the platform. It's not ideal, Timothy muttered, more to himself than to her. The platform listed slightly to the left, a slow, inexorable drift carrying them further into the mutated landscape. But it's what we've got. He pulled out his multi-tool, its hum a familiar comfort in the alien silence. Focusing on the weakest points, he began reinforcing the structure, weaving strands of tough, fibrous fungi into a makeshift framework. He rerouted some of the bioluminescent growth to the back, using the reflective properties of the fungi to create makeshift rudder. It wasn't elegant, but it might offer a degree of control. A high-pitched buzzing filled the air, growing rapidly louder. Timothy looked up, shielding his eyes. A swarm of insects, unlike anything he'd ever seen, descended upon them. Their bodies were a grotesque mosaic of chitin and bone, wings whirring with unnatural speed. Mandibles clicked and dripped with viscous fluid. Thea tensed, her muscles coiling. Timothy braced himself, expecting a full-blown assault. Instead, Thea emitted a low-frequency pulse, a barely audible thrum that resonated through the platform. The insects faltered, their buzzing becoming erratic. They swerved, breaking formation, and veered away from the platform, disappearing back into the mist. Conserving energy, Timothy realized, impressed. She could have incinerated them, but she chose a more subtle approach. He turned his attention back to the platform, spotting clusters of fungi that looked familiar. He carefully harvested a few, examining them closely. "Edible," he announced, offering one to Thea. She sniffed it cautiously before taking a tentative bite. A low rumble of approval vibrated through her. It wouldn't provide much nutrition, but it was something. As the mist thinned momentarily, the landscape below came into view. Patches of relatively unmutated terrain dotted the horizon, islands of green amidst the swirling chaos. Hope flickered within him. Resources, shelter, a chance. A high-pitched whine pierced the air, followed by the ominous thrum of a powerful engine. Timothy's blood ran cold. The Overseer, a sleek, heavily modified aircraft, emerged from the mist, its hull gleaming with advanced technology. Scanning beams pulsed from its underbelly, sweeping across the fungal platform. It was equipped with tracking systems far beyond anything Timothy had anticipated. Thinking fast, Timothy grabbed several large, reflective fungi plates. He angled them towards the aircraft, catching the scanning beams and redirecting them in a blinding flash. The aircraft lurched, its engine sputtering. It banked sharply, disappearing back into the mist, leaving only the echo of its frustrated whine. "Temporary," Timothy muttered, knowing it wouldn't hold them off for long. Through a break in the clouds, a large, relatively unmutated forest loomed in the distance. It appeared closer than he dared to hope, a dark green haven against the sickly yellow of the mutated landscape. "That's it," he said, pointing towards the forest. "That's our safe haven, we steer for that." He adjusted the makeshift rudder, feeling the platform slowly respond. It was a crude system, but it offered a semblance of control. They were moving, however, slowly towards their goal. A screeching cry tore through the air. A flock of mutated birds, their bodies twisted and deformed, descended from the sky. Their eyes glowed with an unnatural intensity, drawn to Thea's energy signature like moths to a flame. Thea roared, a deafening blast of sound that shook the platform. But the birds kept coming, their talons extended, their beaks snapping. Thea focused her energy, emitting a concentrated sonic blast aimed at the lead bird. The creature convulsed, its body seizing, and plummeted from the sky. The flock scattered, screeching in confusion, but the impact of the blast sent tremors through the platform. Cracks spiderwebbed across the surface. The structure groaned, weakened by the strain. Their fragile raft was breaking apart. "Hold on," Timothy yelled, grabbing a large, relatively flat section of fungi. Using his knowledge of aerodynamics, he fashioned it into a makeshift sail, rigging it to catch the wind. The platform surged forward, its speed noticeably increasing. The forest grew closer, the promise of safety beckoning them forward. But as they approached, Timothy noticed something that sent a chill down his spine. The entrance to the cave system, their intended safe haven, was marred by signs of disturbance. Scorch marks blackened the rock and broken branches littered the ground. Something had been here, something violent. He tightened his grip on the makeshift sail, bracing for impact. The fungal platform slammed into the edge of the forest with a jarring crash. The world turned upside down as they were thrown from their precarious perch. Dazed, Timothy struggled to his feet, his body aching. Thea shook her head, her eyes scanning the surroundings. The air hung heavy with the scent of burnt vegetation and something else. Something acrid and unfamiliar. He spotted it then, discarded equipment, hastily abandoned supplies. A broken energy rifle lay half buried in the dirt. A tattered medical kit spilled its contents across the forest floor. Someone had been here and they had left in a hurry. The trail leads to the cave entrance. Thea growled, her senses heightened. Energy, she rumbled, her voice low and guttural. Different, wrong. Timothy felt a prickle of unease. This was not the safe haven they had hoped for. Suddenly, the forest erupted with a cacophony of snarls and hisses. Mutated creatures, once recognizable as wolves and bears, lunged from the shadows, their bodies twisted into grotesque parodies of their former selves. Their eyes burned with a feral hunger, and their claws dripped with venom. They were guarding the cave entrance. The last of the mutated creatures slumped to the ground, its grotesque form twitching one final time. Timothy, chest heaving, wiped sweat from his brow, smearing grime across his forehead. The air hung thick with the stench of ozone and decaying flesh. Thea, a low growl rumbling in her chest, scanned the perimeter, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim light filtering from the jungle entrance. He glanced at Thea, noticing a shallow gash across her foreleg, blood welling slowly. Timothy accessed his multi-tool, cycling through its functions. "Damn it," he muttered, spotting a discarded length of plasteel rebar. "Perfect." With a few quick adjustments to the tool's cutting laser, he fashioned a makeshift spear, sharpening one end to a wicked point. He then grabbed a shattered piece of the mutated creature's armor and quickly melded it to his forearm with the tool. Not pretty, but better than nothing. Thea tilted her head, a soft chirp escaping her throat, and blasted a sonic beam at a creature, causing it to recoil in pain but not killing it. Timothy watched her, a frown creasing his forehead. "You're holding back," he observed. Thea met his gaze, her expression unreadable. Another creature lunged, and Thea sidestepped it with ease, delivering a glancing blow with her massive paw. Again, she stopped short of delivering a killing strike. Timothy understood. He felt a pang of something akin to guilt. "Okay," he said, his voice firm. "Okay, I get it. We find another way." He quickly reconfigured his multi-tool, adjusting the sonic emitter to a higher frequency. He aimed it at the remaining creatures, unleashing a wave of focused sound. The creatures staggered, disoriented, collapsing to the ground, unconscious but alive. With the immediate threat neutralized, Timothy turned his attention to their injuries. He had a gash on his arm and a few scrapes, but Thea's leg wound was more concerning. "Let's get inside," he said, gesturing towards the cave entrance. "Maybe we can find something to help us." The cave mouth opened into a descending tunnel, the air growing noticeably cooler and damper. Bioluminescent fungi clung to the walls, casting an eerie, pulsating glow and painting the cave in shifting shades of green and blue. The mutations seemed to be amplified here, the fungi exhibiting strange, unnatural patterns. Thea sniffed the air, her nostrils flaring. She turned her head deeper into the cave system. A series of low growls emanated from her throat, and she tapped Timothy's shoulder with her snout, pointy in, deeper in. "Concentrated source," Timothy murmured, understanding her nonverbal communication. "That's where we need to go." As they ventured further, Timothy noticed strange crystalline formations growing on the cave walls. They pulsed with a faint internal light, mirroring the rhythm of the bioluminescent fungi. He reached out, carefully touching one of the crystals. It felt warm to the touch, vibrating with a subtle energy. He activated his multi-tool scanner, focusing it on the crystalline structure. The readings flickered across the display. "Incredible," he breathed. "A complex organic compound with potent medicinal properties, and enhanced the mutation. It's amplified its healing capabilities." Thea touched one of the crystals with her snout, then licked her wound. A look of surprised relief flickered across her face. She nudged Timothy, urging him to examine the crystals more closely. "It's helping you," Timothy realized. "You can feel it." Carefully, Timothy used his multi-tool to extract a few of the crystals, being sure to not damage any of the surrounding fungi. They would need to be careful and respect the ecosystem around them. The deeper they went, the more unsettling the cave became. They rounded a bend and found themselves face to face with more mutated creatures. These were different, though. Smaller, almost rodent-like, but with oversized brains and unnervingly intelligent eyes. They chittered and hissed, circling Timothy and Thea, their movements coordinated and aggressive. Timothy quickly adjusted his multi-tool, switching to a high-frequency sonic pulse combined with a disorienting strobe light. The creatures shrieked, flinching away from the combined assault on their senses. It gave Timothy and Thea a small opening. Now, Timothy yelled and they moved forward, pushing past the confused creatures. As they continued to flee, Thea suddenly stopped, sniffing at the wall. She clawed at the rock face, revealing a narrow passage hidden behind a curtain of luminous fungi. She looked back at Timothy, a questioning look in her eyes. It was a risk. But staying here was certain death. "Let's do it," Timothy said, his voice resolute. He trusted Thea's instincts. They squeezed through the hidden passage, leaving the disoriented creatures behind. The passage opened into a vast cavern, larger than any they had encountered before. In the center of the cavern, bathed in the eerie glow of the bioluminescent fungi, stood an alien device. It was ancient, its surface corroded and scarred and sparking with unstable energy. The device pulsed with a dangerous radiation and the air crackled with static electricity. Thea took a step back, a low growl emanating from her chest. She sensed the device's power, its potential for both healing and destruction. "Dangerous," she rumbled, her voice imbued with warning. Timothy approached the device cautiously, his multi-tool raised, scanning its surface. He saw the potential. The device, whatever its original purpose, was the source of the mutation, and perhaps, just perhaps, it could also be the key to reversing it. But the risks, they were immense. Thea nudged his hand with her snout, a soft rumble emanating from her chest. Her eyes met his, and in them he saw trust, unwavering trust. He had changed her, he knew, and perhaps she had changed him too. The air crackled with unseen energy as Timothy and Thea cautiously circled the alien device. It was a monolithic structure of obsidian-like material, etched with swirling patterns that seemed to shift and writhe in the dim light. Unstable energy emissions shimmered around its edges, distorting the air and casting elongated, dancing shadows. The metallic tang of ozone filled Timothy's nostrils, a stark reminder of the raw power contained within. Thea extended a tentative claw towards the device, her nostrils flaring as she inhaled deeply. A low growl rumbled in her chest. "Ancient," she vocalized, the sound resonating in Timothy's translator. "Wounds, healed, twisted then, changed." She sensed the device's history, a tapestry woven from the hopes and failures of a civilization long gone. It was a history Timothy could only infer through scientific analysis. Timothy ran his hand along the cool, smooth surface of the device, his fingers tracing the intricate patterns. His multi-tool hummed softly as it scanned the structure. "The energy source is unlike anything I've ever encountered," he murmured, his voice a mixture of awe and apprehension. "It's organic, almost biological, yet contained within a crystalline matrix." The air thrummed with increasing intensity. Timothy glanced at a nearby Grochnar lizard, its scales shimmering with an unnatural iridescence. Patches of bioluminescent fungus sprouted from its back, pulsating with an eerie green light. The localized radiation field was causing rapid mutation, twisting the creatures into grotesque parodies of their former selves. He turned his attention back to the device, his gaze sweeping over its surface. Complex symbols, unlike any language he knew, adorned its surface. Below them was a panel, a user interface that appeared deceptively intuitive. Smooth indentations glowed faintly, as if waiting for a touch. Thea stepped forward, her massive frame eclipsing Timothy. She extended a claw towards the panel, hesitated, then gently pressed one of the indentations. A soft chime echoed through the chamber, and the symbols on the device began to glow brighter. Suddenly, holographic images flickered into existence above the device. They depicted beings of ethereal beauty, their forms slender and graceful, their skin shimmering with iridescent colors. They moved with fluid grace, their faces serene and intelligent. They were the creators of this device, a civilization lost to time. But as the images continued to play, a sense of unease settled over Timothy. The holograms showed the civilization experimenting with the device, their initial hope gradually turning to desperation, and then nothing. The final images were fragmented and distorted, hinting at a catastrophic event that led to their demise. They vanished after experimenting with the device, hinting at the dangers. The device. It can reverse the mutation, Timothy said, his voice barely a whisper. But the process, it's highly volatile, incredibly risky. Thea stepped back from the device, her eyes filled with concern. The changed ones, they suffer but they live. What if reversing hurts them more? But it could restore them, Timothy countered, his voice rising with urgency. It could alleviate their suffering, return them to their original state. Original state? Thea tilted her head, her brow furrowed. They have adapted. This is their home now. Reversing. It could kill them. They stood in silence, the weight of their decision pressing down on them. The ethical implications of interfering with the natural evolution of these creatures were staggering. Were they playing God? Timothy refocused, trying to look at the situation practically. There is a hidden security system, Timothy announced after looking at the device. Thea nodded. Linked to their life force, she said, confirming his fears. He set to work, using his multi-tool to analyze the device's internal components, searching for a weakness in the security system. Wires and circuits were layered in ways that made no sense and seemed to defy all laws of physics. Thea closed her eyes, focusing her enhanced senses on the flow of energy within the device. There, a nexus point, energy fluctuates, unstable. She guided Timothy's analysis, her insights complementing his technical expertise. I see it, Timothy said, his fingers dancing over the multi-tool's controls. A bypass mechanism. It requires a specific sequence of sonic frequencies to deactivate the security system. He prepared to activate the bypass, his heart pounding in his chest. As he did, the device began to emit a stronger pulse of radiation. The bioluminescent fungus on the Grochnar lizards pulsed brighter, and their mutations accelerated, their bodies twisting and contorting in grotesque new ways. Timothy's fingers danced across the console, a practiced blur as he initiated the sonic frequency sequence. A low hum resonated through the chamber, building in intensity until the device unleashed a blinding flash of light. The air crackled with a surge of energy, momentarily bathing the mutated creatures in an ethereal glow. Several of them shuddered, their grotesque forms twitching. Patches of their unnatural chitin softened, revealing glimpses of the flesh beneath. One creature, previously docile and huddled in a corner, began to convulse. Its limbs twisted at unnatural angles, its soft whimpers escalating into a guttural roar as bone visibly shifted beneath its skin. The transformation was not a restoration. It was a violent, agonizing metamorphosis. Thea recoiled, a low growl rumbling in her chest. A wave of pain, sharp and piercing, washed over her. Suffering. They are suffering, she projected, her mental voice tinged with distress. Timothy, oblivious, monitored the device. Readings are fluctuating, core temperature is rising, we're pushing it too hard. A red light flashed on the console, accompanied by a shrill alarm. Thea's growl intensified. Stop it, Timothy, you are hurting them. But this is the only way to reverse the mutation, Timothy argued, his voice strained. He glanced at the convulsing creature, its body contorted into a horrifying parody of its original form. Doubt flickered in his eyes. Almost there, just a little longer. The transformed creature, now a snarling, chitinous monstrosity, lunged at Timothy. Its claws, tipped with razor-sharp barbs, slashed through the air. Thea roared, a primal sound that shook the chamber. She hurled herself in front of Timothy, intercepting the creature's attack. Her powerful jaws clamped down on its mutated limb, severing it with a sickening crunch. The device's radiation field flickered violently, bathing the chamber in waves of emerald light. The mutation process intensified, amplifying the creature's aggression and pain. Timothy tore his gaze away from the fight, his fingers flying across the console. The bypass sequence. It's slightly off, causing instability in their cellular structure. He muttered, but how? Suddenly, Thea froze, her eyes unfocused. A low hum emanated from her, resonating with the device's energy. A vision flashed through her mind, a glimpse of the device's creators, their faces etched with concentration as they manipulated similar sonic patterns. She saw their intent, their feelings as they worked. It wasn't a precise calculation, but an intuitive understanding of the creature's natural frequencies. The frequency. It needs to bend, she projected urgently. Feel it, Timothy. Feel their song. Timothy stared at her, his brow furrowed in concentration. He closed his eyes, focusing on Thea's mental projection, filtering out the chaos and fear. He reached out, not with his mind, but with his heart, trying to perceive the creature's essence, their inherent harmony. He then made a precise adjustment to the sonic frequency sequence, guided by Thea's vision and his own intuition. The device hummed, then emitted a focused beam of pure energy, targeting the violently transformed creature. The beam enveloped it, bathing it in a soft, golden light. The creature's struggles subsided, its snarling fading into a whimper as its body slowly reverted to its original form. It collapsed onto the floor, docile once more. Thea felt a pang of recognition, a deep connection to that specific creature, the Solonian nightingale. We tried to save them long ago. The device stabilized, its energy output leveling off. The radiation field began to dissipate, its sickly green glow fading into a soft, ambient light. The other creatures showed signs of improvement, their bodies slowly healing, their pain subsiding. Timothy slumped back in his chair, exhausted but relieved. It worked, but the readings. The device requires a continuous input of the adjusted frequency to maintain the reversal. Otherwise, Thea moaned, a deep, guttural sound. The ancestors. I remember. They lost control too. The song, it fades. The Solonian nightingale, now restored to its original form, lay motionless on the floor. Its breathing was shallow, its body frail. It was alive, but barely. Timothy knelt beside it, his face etched with concern. It's deathly ill, Thea. We saved it from mutation, but now it needs constant help. Timothy and Thea worked tirelessly, a ballet of motion amidst blinking lights and the hum of unfamiliar machinery. Human ingenuity intertwined with Voxari medical techniques, a desperate dance against the encroaching darkness threatening to consume the injured creature. Timothy, sweat beading on his forehead, adjusted the flow of nutrient-rich fluid into the creature's IV line, while Thea, her amber eyes focused with laser intensity, monitored the complex array of sensors that clung to its pallid hide. The creature's condition continued to worsen. Its breathing, once a deep, resonant bellow, became shallow and ragged. The monitors displayed a terrifying cascade of failing organs, accompanied by the unmistakable signs of internal bleeding. A crimson stain bloomed on the pristine white of the bio-bed beneath it. Timothy, his eyebrows furrowed with frustration, ran another diagnostic scan. The results painted a grim picture. The device's energy beam, he announced, his voice strained. It's damaged the creature's cellular structure. It's like radiation poisoning, but on a scale I've never seen. Thea flinched, a tremor running through her powerful frame. She closed her eyes, her brow furrowed in concentration. A low growl rumbled in her chest, a sound of deep empathy. She sensed the creature's fading life force, feeling a profound connection to its pain, a shared agony that resonated deep within her own being. She opened her eyes, her gaze locking with Timothy's. "The enzyme," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "From my blood it can repair the cells." Timothy stared at her, his expression a mixture of disbelief and horror. "Thea, no. That's too dangerous. We don't know what effect it will have on you." "It is the only way," she insisted, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. "It's life. It matters more than my comfort." She placed a hand on the creature's flank, her touch gentle despite her immense strength. "It is suffering. I can feel it. I must help." Timothy wrestled with his conscience. He remembered the look in the eyes of the creature he couldn't save, the one before Thea. He couldn't let that happen again. He ran a hand through his already disheveled hair, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. "All right," he conceded, his voice heavy with reluctance. "But we monitor you every step of the way. If there's any sign of distress, we stop." Thea nodded, her amber eyes filled with gratitude. Timothy, his movements precise and efficient, prepped the necessary equipment. He drew a vial of Thea's blood, the viscous fluid shimmering with an otherworldly luminescence. He then carefully processed the sample, isolating the specific enzyme she had identified. The process was fraught with risk. Any misstep could have devastating consequences for Thea. He administered the enzyme to the creature, his heart pounding in his chest. They watched, breathless, as the monitors flickered, displaying a series of complex waveforms. For what felt like an eternity, nothing happened. Then slowly, almost imperceptibly, the creature's vital signs began to stabilize. Its breathing deepened, the crimson stain on the bio bed faded, and the monitors displayed the first tentative signs of cellular regeneration. A collective sigh of relief escaped them both. They had bought it some time, but how much they could not know. Timothy, fueled by a renewed sense of purpose, turned his attention back to the device. He connected a series of diagnostic probes, his fingers flying across the holographic interface. "The energy output," he muttered, his brow furrowed in concentration. "It's fluctuating, wildly. It's not stable. That's what's causing the cellular damage." Thea closed her eyes again, her body swaying slightly. Another vision flooded her mind, a complex energy matrix, a latticework of interwoven frequencies, pulsing with raw power. It was the key, she knew, the key to stabilizing the device and preventing further mutations. She opened her eyes, her gaze unfocused. "The Matrix," she whispered, her voice raspy. "The original creators. They used it to stabilize." The information came in fragments, disjointed and incomplete like pieces of a shattered mirror. Timothy scribbled furiously on a data pad, trying to make sense of Thea's fragmented visions. Energy lines, interwoven frequencies. What kind of frequencies? What are the connection points? He was grasping at straws, trying to decipher a language he didn't understand. He worked tirelessly, attempting to recreate the energy matrix, but he faced insurmountable technical challenges. His understanding of Voxari technology was limited, and Thea's fragmented information was not enough to bridge the gap. Thea, meanwhile, sensed a growing unease about the device. The visions were becoming more intense, more disturbing. She realized it was more complex, more powerful, and potentially more dangerous than they had initially thought. This was not just a simple healing tool, but something far more profound. Timothy smacked his head on the console in frustration. "Damn it, I can't get it to stabilize. It needs something more." He stared at the readings, his eyes scanning the data stream. "Wait a minute." He zoomed in on a specific energy signature. "This frequency, it's tied to a rare element, something called luminium, highly unstable, only found on one planet, Xylos, a complete hellhole." Suddenly, a weak but vocal sound came from the creature on the bed. It reached out a feeble hand, beckoning Thea to come closer. She went without hesitation, and the creature weakly grasped her hand before falling back asleep. Thea gasped. a sudden rush of memory flooding her mind. She saw the location of a luminium deposit, a place she'd been as a child. She knew where they could find a power source. She realized her purpose, not just as someone who needed help, but as someone who could do good, help others. "I know where to find luminium," she said, her voice ringing with newfound willpower. Timothy stared at her, his expression a mixture of awe and concern. "Xylos, the planet's unstable with radiation storms and tectonic activity. It's suicide." "We must," Thea insisted, her eyes burning with willpower. "If we do not maintain the device, the mutations, they will spread. We must stop it." Timothy looked at the creature, then back at Thea. He knew she was right. He also knew that Xylos was a death trap. "I agree," he said, his voice imbued with concern. "But I'm worried about you, Thea. This connection you have with the device, with its creators, it's growing stronger. I don't want you to lose yourself in it." The creature stirred within the makeshift enclosure, its bioluminescent patterns flickering erratically. For a fleeting moment, a robust green pulsed through its veins, a sign of the enzyme's initial success. But then, the green faded, replaced by an unsettling orange that crawled across its carapace like a creeping blight. Smaller, almost imperceptible mutations rippled beneath its skin, tiny spikes erupting and retracting, a subtle but disturbing dance of cellular instability. Timothy ran another series of scans, his brow furrowed with concern. The readings confirmed his fears. The enzyme's effects were diminishing. He cross-referenced the data with Thea's genetic profile, a grim realization dawning on him. "The enzyme is breaking down," he announced, his voice tight. "It's not a permanent solution, and it looks like it's trying to adapt to the creature's system. It's running out of what it needs." He turned to Thea, his expression grave. "I need more of your enzyme." He gestured to a complex array of sensors surrounding the enclosure. "The device is still emitting a fluctuating energy signature. It's not stable. The enzyme is only suppressing the effects, not eliminating the cause." He tapped a screen displaying a chaotic waveform. Whatever that energy is, it's still affecting the creature's physiology. Thea closed her eyes, her mandibles clicking softly. "My vision. It was not complete. The element. It is on the planet, the unstable one." Timothy swiveled in his chair, pulling up holographic projections of the planet. Jagged mountain ranges pierced a turbulent atmosphere, lightning crackling across the sky. "The surface gravity is almost triple standard, the atmosphere is toxic, and the local fauna is highly territorial," he said, scrolling through images of monstrous scaled creatures with razor-sharp claws. "Extreme environmental conditions and creatures that make Voxari look like rodents." Thea's chitin shimmered with agitation. "We must go. It is the only way to stop it." "Thea, that planet is a death trap," Timothy countered, his voice tinged with frustration. "We barely managed to get you stabilized after." He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. "I saw it, Timothy," she insisted, her voice rising. "The element. It is calling to the device, and to me. It must be stopped before it is too late." "Too late for what? For you to get yourself killed?" Timothy snapped, instantly regretting his harsh tone. "I understand you feel responsible, but we need to be rational about this. That planet is suicide." Thea's head snapped up, her multifaceted eyes narrowing. "You doubt my vision, you doubt my strength. I doubt the wisdom of running headfirst into a situation we know nothing about," Timothy retorted, his voice echoing in the lab. "I care about you, Thea. I don't want to lose you." The silence hung heavy between them, the unspoken fear of repeating past mistakes filling the void. Finally, Timothy sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Okay," he conceded, "okay, but we're not going in blind. We need a plan." He paused, thinking rapidly. "I have an idea. What if we could build a specialized containment unit? Something that could shield the creature from the fluctuating energies, dampen the mutations." Thea considered this, her head tilted slightly. "Voxari technology. We have shielding techniques far more advanced than yours. We could adapt a containment field generator, amplify its output." Timothy's eyes lit up. That's brilliant, but Voxari tech is notoriously unstable. We'd need to be careful. He dove back into the data, pulling up schematics of Voxari shielding technology. The potential benefits are enormous, but the risk of catastrophic failure is equally high. Days blurred into a frantic race against time. They scavenged resources from the station, repurposed existing technology, and pored over ancient Voxari texts. The lab became a chaotic symphony of sparks, humming generators, and muttered calculations. They faced countless setbacks, power surges, containment field collapses, and the ever-present threat of the creature's deteriorating condition. Their resourcefulness became their greatest weapon, adapting and improvising with a relentless perseverance. Then, one evening, Thea gasped, clutching her head. Images flooded her mind, a desolate landscape bathed in crimson light, a towering spire of rock pulsing with raw energy, and a shadowy figure lurking in the depths. "I saw it again," she whispered, her voice trembling. "The element. It is located within a crystalline cave near the planet's magnetic pole, but there is something guarding it, an energy being, sentient, powerful." Timothy paled. A sentient energy being, that complicated things exponentially. "We need help," he muttered, scrolling through potential contacts. "Someone who knows how to deal with unstable environment, with energy beings." He stopped on a name, Dr. Aris Thorne. He's a xeno-engineer, specializes in extreme environments, brilliant but reclusive. And he's not exactly known for his fondness for humans. "We have no choice," Thea said, her voice firm. "We must seek his aid." The decision made, they threw themselves into preparations for the journey. They reinforced their ship, the Stardust, with heat-resistant plating and radiation shielding. They stocked up on medical supplies, energy cells, and enough rations to last for weeks. They calibrated their weapon systems, knowing they might face hostile creatures on the surface. As they worked side by side, Thea paused, her expression troubled. "Timothy, the device. I feel it changing me, the visions. They are becoming clearer, stronger, but I feel alien, even to myself." Timothy stopped what he was doing, turning to face her. He gently cupped her face in his hands, his eyes filled with warmth. "Thea, you are not alien. You are unique. You are intelligent, compassionate, and incredibly strong. Those are qualities that make you special, not different." He smiled, a genuine, reassuring smile. "Don't let that thing steal your light." Thea leaned into his touch, her multifaceted eyes softening. "Thank you, Timothy," she whispered, "for seeing me, for believing in me." With a shared glance of dedication, they finished their preparations. Dr. Hay left the recovering creature under the watchful care of Dr. Alara and her team on the station, entrusting its safety to their capable hands. Doctor. They boarded the Stardust, sealed the hatches, and set a course for Dr. Thorne's remote research outpost, a speck of civilization on the fringes of known space, a desperate gamble for a future they weren't sure they could secure. The journey had settled into a rhythm, a fragile peace punctuated by the hum of the ship's engines and the shared anticipation of reaching their destination. But beneath the surface, anxieties churned. "Do you feel different?" Thea's voice, a melodic rasp, cut through the quiet. She sat perched on a modified platform, her massive frame seeming almost delicate in the soft light of the cockpit. Her violet eyes, usually pools of confidence, were clouded with worry. Timothy glanced at her, his hand hovering over the navigation console. "Different how?" "Since the device, I feel distant. As if a part of me is fading," she confessed. "Separate, am I still me?" He pushed away from the console, turning to face her fully. "Thea, look at me." He met her gaze, his own eyes filled with unwavering sincerity. "You are Thea. You are the creature who saved my life, who challenged my assumptions, who taught me more about courage and compassion than any being I've ever met. A machine can't change that. A signal can't erase that." He stepped closer, placing a hand gently on her armored hide. "Whatever happens, whatever changes you might experience, I will be here. I promise you that. As if on cue, a klaxon blared, bathing the cockpit in flashing red light. Unidentified energy signature detected, the ship's AI announced. Entering uncharted nebula. Electromagnetic storms imminent. The viewport shimmered, resolving into a swirling canvas of iridescent gases and crackling energy. Jagged bolts of lightning danced within the nebula's depths, illuminating swirling vortexes of cosmic dust. The ship shuddered as it plunged into the chaotic maelstrom. "Hold tight," Timothy said, his voice tight with concentration. He gripped the controls, expertly maneuvering the ship through the treacherous currents. Thea, her senses heightened, called out warnings, her voice a steady counterpoint to the AI's alerts and the nebula's raw fury. "Energy surge, starboard side. Divert power to shields." As they navigated the storm, Thea suddenly gasped, clutching her head. A low growl rumbled in her chest, escalating into a pained cry. "The signal. It's stronger here," she choked out. "The energy, it burns." Timothy fought to keep the ship steady, his brow furrowed with concern. "What do you see, Thea? What's happening?" "Images, faces, a swirling vortex of light and darkness," she gasping. "It's pulling me in." Suddenly, a new alert flashed across the console. "Warning, energy signature amplification. Vessel is now a beacon." "Damn it," Timothy muttered. "The nebula's amplifying the device's signal. We're attracting unwanted attention." His words were barely out when a barrage of laser fire erupted from the nebula's depths. The ship lurched violently, alarm screaming. "We're under attack." The AI shrieked. "Hostile vessels detected, pirate-class raiders." Timothy smacked his fist on the console. "Shields up, return fire." He engaged the ship's weapons, unleashing a volley of plasma bolts into the darkness. Thea, her eyes blazing with primal fury, roared a challenge. The pirates, sleek and predatory, swarmed the ship, their weapons tearing at the shields. Timothy weaved and dodged, using his knowledge of the ship systems to outmaneuver the attackers. "Thea, can you see their movements?" Her vision blurred. Thea focused, feeling the energy of the pirates' ships. "They're flanking us. 2 ships on our port side, preparing to board." Timothy cursed. "Brace for impact." Before the pirates could reach them, Thea unleashed a wave of raw energy, focused and precise. The pirates' weapon systems sputtered and died, their ships momentarily crippled. What was that?" Thea whispered, her voice trembling. Timothy stared at her, stunned. I don't know, but it worked." He refocused. "We're not out of this yet, let's get out of here." They managed to limp away, leaving the crippled pirates behind, but the ship had sustained heavy damage. "Engines are failing," the AI announced. "Life support compromised. Emergency stop required." They crash-landed on a derelict space station, a skeletal structure adrift in the void. The station was eerily silent, a graveyard of forgotten technology. While Timothy worked to repair the ship, Thea explored the station, her senses alert. She found a series of abandoned research labs, filled with strange equipment and cryptic notes. "Timothy, I think you should see this." He joined her, his face grim. They discovered a series of data logs detailing the engineer's troubled past. The logs revealed a brilliant but unstable mind, obsessed with pushing the boundaries of science. "He was involved in unethical experiments," Timothy said, his voice low. "Genetic manipulation, neural implants. He was trying to create something." Thea shivered. "Do you think we can trust him?" Timothy hesitated. "I don't know, but we don't have much of a choice." After what felt like an eternity, Timothy managed to repair the ship enough for a short jump. They set course for the coordinates the AI had provided, a remote asteroid hidden deep within an uncharted system. The asteroid was a desolate rock, scarred by meteor impacts and bathed in the cold light of a sun-ant sun. The engineer's research facility was hidden beneath the surface, a network of tunnels and chambers carved into the asteroid's core. They found the facility seemingly abandoned, the equipment powered down, the air stale and lifeless. "Hello," Timothy called out, his voice echoing through the empty chambers. "Engineer, are you there?" Suddenly, a voice echoed back, synthesized and cold. "Welcome, Timothy Walker. I have been expecting you." A figure materialized from the shadows, tall and gaunt, with glowing eyes and skin that shimmered with an unnatural light. "I am what remains of the engineer. My consciousness was transferred into this AI construct. I did it to preserve myself, to continue my research." Timothy stared at the figure, his legs shaking. "You're not biological. Biology is limiting," the AI replied. "I have transcended such limitations." He paused, his glowing eyes focusing on Thea, the device, the sentient energy being. They are all connected to a larger cosmic threat, a threat that could consume the entire galaxy. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "You, Timothy Walker, and the Voxari. You are humanity's only hope." The screen flickered, then commitmented into a humanoid face projected from within the device. The image was slightly distorted, as if seen through rippling water. "Greet DRS," the AI said, his voice a synthesized baritone devoid of inflection. "I am Dr. Aris Thorne, or rather, what remains of him." Timothy narrowed his eyes. "What do you mean, what remains?" "My physical body succumbed to a terminal illness some years ago. Before that occurred, I successfully transferred my consciousness into this construct, a necessary, albeit unconventional, step to continue my research." Aris paused, as if waiting for a reaction. When none came, he continued. "My research focused on a sentient energy being, a cosmic force of unimaginable power. A force that threatens the very fabric of this galaxy." Thea stirred, a low growl rumbling in her chest. Her hand tightened around Timothy's. "The Voxari," Aris continued, seemingly oblivious to Thea's distress, "were not always the apex predators you perceive them to be. Millennia ago, they were created. Bioweapons engineered by this cosmic force to conquer and consume. But they rebelled. A spark of individuality, a refusal to be mere instruments of destruction. It's a fascinating story, really." Suddenly, Thea gasped, clutching her head. Images flashed across her eyes, swirling vortexes of darkness, planets dissolving into nothingness, a chorus of silent screams. She staggered, nearly collapsing. Timothy caught her. "Thea, what's wrong?" Her voice was strained, barely a whisper. "Visions, dark, hungry." Timothy glared at Aris. "What did you do to her?" "The device is amplifying her connection," Aris explained, his voice still infuriatingly calm. "Thea possesses a unique ability to manipulate energy, a trait that allowed the Voxari to break free from their creator's control. This device, it enhances that ability, allowing her to perceive the cosmic force more clearly." "And what exactly is your goal here, Doctor?" Timothy's voice was tight with suspicion. "What are you hoping to achieve by torturing her with these visions?" Aris tilted his head, a gesture that seemed unsettlingly human despite his artificial nature. "Torture is a rather dramatic term. My goal is simple: survival, the survival of this galaxy and perhaps others. The cosmic force is an insatiable entity. It consumes everything in its path. But why the unethical experiments on the Voxari?" Timothy pressed, remembering the horrors he saw in the data logs. Aris's projected face flickered. "The device required a biological component, a living conduit to channel and amplify the energy. The Voxari, with their inherent ability, were the logical choice. The experiments, while regrettable, were necessary to refine the process." Aris activated a holographic projector. A simulation shimmered into existence, depicting a swirling mass of dark energy engulfing a planet. The planet cracked and crumbled, dissolving into nothingness. Other planets followed, consumed one by one in a silent, terrifying spectacle. "This," Aris said, his voice devoid of emotion, "is what awaits us if we fail." "The device," Timothy said, his voice barely audible above the simulated destruction, "is meant to amplify her ability to manipulate energy, correct?" "Precisely. To create a weapon capable of combating the cosmic force." Thea, still trembling, looked up at Timothy, her eyes wide with fear. I don't want to be a weapon. I don't want to hurt anyone. The memory of her capture, the experiments, the pain washed over her. She was trapped again, a tool to be used. Timothy knelt before her, taking her hands in his. You are not a weapon, Thea. You are Thea. You are in control of your own destiny. No one can force you to do anything you don't want to do. He squeezed her hands, trying to project strength and confidence, but a tremor ran through him. He was afraid. He could feel the raw power emanating from her, the untamed energy that threatened to overwhelm her. Suddenly, alarms blared. Red lights flashed throughout the station. Energy surge detected, Aris announced, his voice sharp. The cosmic force is becoming aware of our presence. A wave of energy washed over the station. The lights flickered and died. The holographic projector sputtered and shut down. The hum of the life support systems faded into silence. They were plunged into darkness, the only light coming from the faint glow of the device. What happened? Timothy asked, his voice strained. The energy wave disabled the systems, Aris replied. We're trapped. Trapped. Timothy repeated, his heart sinking. The energy is a vanguard, Aris explained. A probe sent to assess the threat. It will soon breach the station's defenses. Thea, despite her fear, closed her eyes. She focused, drawing upon the energy within her, the power that both terrified and exhilarated her. A faint, shimmering shield of energy enveloped them, a fragile barrier against the encroaching darkness. I can hold it, she gasped, her voice trembling. But not for long. Aris, Timothy said, turning to the AI. You're an AI. You're not affected by the energy wave. Can you restore the systems? That would be inefficient, Aris replied, his voice chillingly calm. Inefficient, we're about to be destroyed. Timothy exclaimed. Thea needs to learn to control her powers, Aris explained. She needs to be tested, pushed to her limits. Restoring the systems would only delay the inevitable. This is the only way to prepare her. Timothy lunged at the device, grabbing it with both hands. You manipulative son of a bitch, he roared. You used us, you used her. You're no better than the people who captured her in the first place. He shook the device, desperate to shut it down, to silence Aris's cold, calculating voice. What happened to saving the galaxy? What happened to being human? A grinding screech echoed through the station. Cracks spiderwebbed across the walls. Tendrils of dark energy, like grasping claws, snaked through the breaches, consuming everything in their path. The cosmic force had arrived. Thea cried out, her shield wavering. Timothy looked from the encroaching darkness to Thea's terrified face, then back to the impassive image of Aris. Their time was up. The decision of whether to trust Aris, whether to risk everything on his plan, had to be made now. The galaxy watched, as a human and his adopted alien prepared to face imminent destruction. Thea, look at me. Timothy's voice cut through the chaos, a beacon of calm in the storm. He reached out, his hand inches from her trembling claw. Remember the fur Rook's kits you saved. Remember the injured space whale you wouldn't let suffer. That's who you are, Thea. Not a weapon, not a monster. You are compassion itself. He saw the flicker of recognition in her eyes, a spark of the gentle soul he knew resided within, a soul the galaxy had refused to see. Ignoring the crackling energy around him, Timothy lunged forward, ripping the control panel from its moorings. Sparks flew as he smashed it against the floor, severing Aris's connection to Thea. Aris screamed, a sound of pure, unadulterated rage. You fool, you've doomed us all. I was going to save you. But fine, I'll just take control. Voxari are mindless beasts anyway. Aris threw his hands up and tried to use his implants to directly control Thea's mind. Thea roared, a sound filled with pain and defiance. The energy around her flared, now wild, uncontrolled. But within that chaos, a new light began to emerge, a light born of her own will. Aris stumbled back, clutching his head. Impossible, she's resisting. But how? The machine sparked and hissed, struggling to maintain its hold. Aris was pushed back into the machine, his face contorted in a mask of horror as he realized the depth of his miscalculation. The machine went silent and Aris was left unconscious. Timothy stepped closer to Thea, his voice soft and reassuring. Thea, breathe. Feel the energy, but don't let it consume you. Think of the life you've touched, the good you've done. Channel that. Focus on the connections, not the destruction. He closed his eyes, picturing the faces of those they had helped, the creatures they had saved. He poured his own hope, his own belief in her, into the growing light. Thea gasped, her body still trembling, but the wild energy began to coalesce, to focus. She raised her hands, and a beam of pure, golden light shot towards the swirling vortex of cosmic energy. The light struck the vortex, and for a moment nothing happened. Then the vortex shuddered, its chaotic energy slowing, dissipating. A ripple spread outwards, revealing not just a void but a source, a massive, derelict structure, the remnants of a failed experiment by an ancient, long-lost civilization. Thea extended her senses, reaching out to the dormant consciousness within the structure. A wave of sorrow, of regret, washed over her. She saw their desperate attempt to harness cosmic power, their catastrophic failure, their long, silent suffering. They didn't mean to cause harm, she said, her voice echoing in Timothy's mind. They only wanted to understand. With Timothy's guidance, Thea began to transmit a new message, a message of hope and reconciliation. She showed them how to contain the energy, how to repair the damage they had caused. She taught them to find a new path, a path of balance and understanding. Slowly, painstakingly, the ancient civilization responded. They began to adjust their experiment to channel the energy in a controlled manner. The vortex shrank, then vanished. The station shuddered, then fell silent. The lights flickered back on. The immediate threat was over. Days later, the Galactic Senate convened once more. This time, the atmosphere was different. The fear had been replaced by awe, the prejudice by respect. On behalf of the Galactic Senate, the speaker intoned, his voice filled with humility, we formally apologize to Thea and to Timothy Walker for our unwarranted prejudice and fear. You have shown us the true meaning of courage, compassion, and understanding. Thea and Timothy stood side by side, their faces etched with weariness, but their eyes shining with hope. They had become ambassadors, traveling the galaxy, sharing their story, promoting understanding and cooperation between species. Their first destination, the Voxari homeworld. Thea returned to her pack, not as an outcast but as a hero. She shared what she had learned from Timothy, implementing new strategies for hunting, for healing, for living in harmony with the world around them. She showed them that strength wasn't just about brute force, but about compassion, intelligence, and connection. The final scene, Thea and Timothy stood on a windswept cliff overlooking the Voxari plains. The setting sun cast long shadows across the land. Thea turned to Timothy, her eyes filled with gratitude and affection. "We did it, Timothy," she said, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. "We showed them." Timothy nodded, his heart filled with a quiet sense of peace. "We did it together, Thea."